They ripped his 11-year-old daughter off her bike in broad daylight, slammed her into a van with no plates, and tossed him on his own lawn as neighbors stood frozen. The uniforms were fake, the authority a lie, and by the time Marcus Hale hit the ground, his little girl was already gone. But what they didn't know was that they'd just declared war on a retired Marine colonel with nothing left to lose. It was the kind of morning that made Willow Glen Estates feel like a postcard: blue skies, trimmed hedges, and the low hum of sprinklers echoing across driveways. Families in robes waved over coffee mugs, and the smell of bacon drifted from cracked kitchen windows. To most, it was just another calm Sunday. But to Colonel Marcus Hale, peace was never something he took for granted. Not after Fallujah. Not after Kandahar. And certainly not here, not in a neighborhood that boasted security gates, surveillance cameras, and an HOA with a 200-page rulebook. At 58, Marcus was still built like a battlefield commander: broad shoulders, squared jaw, silver haircut close to the scalp, and the kind of eyes that didn't blink at threats. He stood in his backyard, adjusting the spray on the garden hose as he watered the rose bushes Lena had helped him plant last spring. His movements were automatic, but his mind was scanning: cars parked too long, unfamiliar faces walking dogs, the usual recon of a man who couldn't stop reading the world like a map of potential ambushes. His daughter, Lena Hale, was 11, whip-smart and radiant, with messy brown curls poking out from beneath her purple bike helmet. She circled the driveway in lazy loops, singing along to something only she could hear through her earbuds, wearing a t-shirt that read "Future Engineer" in big bold letters. Her bike, a purple cruiser with silver handlebars and rainbow streamers, sparkled in the morning sun. "Stay close to the driveway, sweetheart," Marcus called out without turning. "I know, Dad," she sang back, veering just enough to skim the edge of the mailbox. That's when everything shifted. A white SUV rolled slowly into the cul-de-sac. No plates. No HOA sticker on the windshield. Windows tinted darker than local ordinances allowed. Marcus's jaw tightened. He shut off the hose and stepped forward, eyes narrowing. The SUV stopped. The doors opened. Two men stepped out, both white, both mid-30s to early 40s. One was wiry with sharp features and wraparound sunglasses. The other was broad, bearded, and carrying a clipboard like he owned the neighborhood. Both wore black tactical vests with cheap white lettering that read HOA Compliance Enforcement. Immediately, Marcus knew. Too much confidence. Too little protocol. Wrong energy. "Morning, sir," clipboard said, gesturing casually toward Lena. "We've received a report of an unregistered recreational vehicle in the area." "That's my daughter's bicycle," Marcus said flatly, stepping between them and the driveway. The tall one with sunglasses held up a plastic badge, cheap laminate, from 10 feet away. "We need to verify the property's recreational clearance. It's standard enforcement procedure." Marcus didn't move. "There's no such procedure in this HOA. I've read the bylaws front to back." They didn't flinch. Redbeard scribbled something on his clipboard. Sunglasses stepped forward. "Sir, if you resist compliance verification, you will be subject to administrative penalty under Code 3.4b. Marcus's eyes didn't leave theirs. His pulse was calm, but his muscles were already preparing for violence. "That's not a real code," he said. "You need to leave." And then, everything unraveled. Redbeard lunged, fast, too fast, crossing the lawn and grabbing Lena by the arm. She screamed as she was yanked from her bike and hit the pavement, her knees scraping bloody. "Hey!" Marcus roared, surging forward. Sunglasses drew a taser and aimed it center mass. "Back off. You're interfering with a compliance operation." Lena was crying now, kicking wildly as Redbeard tried to lift her toward the open SUV door. Marcus froze, not in fear, but in calculation. Taser. No firearm. No radio chatter. Not cops. Not legit. Just thugs with props. "Okay," Marcus said, voice low, hands raised. "Okay. Don't hurt her." She's being transported to the HOA processing center, Redbeard barked. You'll be notified. What's the charge? Marcus demanded. Violation. 3.4b, unauthorized recreational equipment. That's not real. Get back. They shoved Lena into the back seat and slammed the door. She was screaming for her father, pounding on the glass. Marcus lunged. The taser fired. Agony. It ripped through his chest and spine like barbed wire dragging across muscle and nerve. He crumpled onto the front lawn, his lawn, muscles locking, vision tunneling. He hit the ground face first, choking on his own breath as the SUV tires screeched away. The last thing he saw before the blackness swallowed him was his daughter's tear-streaked face disappearing behind tinted glass. He woke up to the scent of wet grass and a voice. Marcus? Marcus. It was Mrs. Lindell, the retired librarian from across the street. She held a cordless phone in trembling hands. I called 911. They said it's complicated. Something about HOA jurisdiction? I didn't understand. Where's Lena? Marcus gasped, dragging himself upright. His arms trembled. His heart felt like it had been struck with a hammer. Gone, she whispered. They took her. He didn't wait. By the time paramedics arrived, Marcus was inside his house pulling out a secured laptop from the hidden compartment in the closet. He didn't call the local police again. He didn't trust the delay, the excuses. He called Rhea Morgan, former intelligence officer, now cybersecurity expert. She answered on the second ring. Marcus? I need you to find a white SUV. No plates. Willow Glen Estates. Tossed me. Took my daughter. Say no more. Marcus scanned the driveway from his kitchen window. No movement. Neighbors were back behind curtains, pretending not to see. Pretending not to know. Within an hour, Rhea sent stills from traffic cams, the SUV at a red light, turning into a forgotten strip mall, a reflection on a gas station window catching part of the VIN. Marcus enlarged the shot. Target confirmed. He grabbed his tactical gear. Retired or not, he still had it all, the sidearm, the field med kit, the reinforced gloves, the boots that had marched across 3 continents. He didn't call the cops. He called Elias Ford. Marcus stood in his garage, chest still burning from the taser, as he zipped up the tactical vest he hadn't worn in over a decade. Every movement was slow, precise, deliberate, muscle memory kicking in, just like it had during nighttime raids halfway across the world. The ghosts of past missions lingered in his head, but this wasn't a war zone. This was Loveland, Colorado. His neighborhood. His daughter. And someone had crossed a line they would never uncross. He slid a secure earpiece into place and spoke into the encrypted line connected to his old military laptop, still glowing on the workbench. Rhea, you still with me? Her voice crackled through, calm as ever. Live and locked. I pulled footage from every traffic cam within 5 miles. The SUV hit a red light on Kenmore Avenue at 11:43 a.m., then turned north toward an old outlet center. Security feeds from the gas station caught a partial VIN off the driver's side door. Marcus opened the image Rhea sent. There it was, the reflection of the vehicle's ID etched into chrome, caught just long enough by the sun. Got it, he murmured. And the location? Abandoned strip mall outside city limits. No official business registry. But here's the kicker, the side entrance is marked Neighborhood Civic Authority. Sounds official, right? Except it doesn't exist in any legal database. Not county, not state, not federal. It's a shell. Marcus's jaw flexed. They built a fake agency. A front. That's what it looks like, Rhea replied. No digital footprint. No tax ID. It's smoke. Marcus shut the laptop and rolled out a hard case from under the bench. Inside, lockpicks, non-lethal munitions, flashlights, Kevlar gloves, and a sidearm he hadn't drawn since the day he retired. It was all there, waiting. Waiting for a day like this. He lifted his phone again and hit a contact he hadn't used in 9 years. It rang twice. Forward came the gravelly voice. Elias. It's Marcus Hale. I need your help. A pause. You never call. Unless it's bad. They took Lena. Silence. Then, where do I meet you? An hour later, Marcus crouched in a tree line across from the crumbling parking lot of the old outlet mall. The SUV was there, parked crookedly near a cracked loading dock. 2 figures moved boxes from the rear. Both wore black vests with Neighborhood Civic Authority stenciled in cheap vinyl. Visual confirmed, Marcus said into his mic 2 at the dock. One armed. No visible insignia. No badges. I've got 3 more inside, Rio whispered in his ear. Infrared feed from the traffic cam up the road bounces heat signatures through the front bay. All male. Weapons unknown. There's one in the back corner, small frame, not moving. That's Lena, Marcus said quietly. His gut twisted, but his hand stayed steady. Elias, you copy? Loud and clear came the voice from the shadows. A black Suburban was parked a block away, and out of it stepped Elias Ford, older, beard thicker, but still carrying the presence of a Navy SEAL with unfinished business. He had 2 others with him, a sniper named King and a breacher named Patel. All ex-military. No badges. No paperwork. Just skill. Same rules? Elias asked, sliding rounds into a suppressed rifle. We go in, no one dies unless necessary. Priority, extraction. Marcus nodded. And I want them talking when it's over. Understood. Then let's move. The team advanced under cover of darkness. Elias and King flanked left while Marcus and Patel slipped in through the rear access hallway, sidearms drawn, flashbangs clipped to their belts. At the back of the structure, just past a broken vending machine and what used to be a nail salon, they found the office. Marcus peeked through the cracked doorway. Lena was there. Hands zip-tied. Knees scabbed. Curled up on a stained mattress. One man sat beside her, scrolling through a phone, a holstered taser on his belt. Marcus didn't hesitate. The door swung inward, and before the man could shout, Patel was on him, twisting the arm, disarming the taser, slamming him against the wall. Lena screamed. It's me, baby, Marcus whispered as he dropped to his knees, cutting the zip ties with a blade from his belt. It's Dad. I'm here. She flung her arms around his neck, sobbing. They said you wouldn't come, they said, they lied, he said, lifting her into his arms. They lied to stay in power. That ends now. From the far end of the hallway, King's voice buzzed over comms. 2 down. We've got 3 zip-tied in the main corridor. Operation secure. Marcus handed Lena to Elias's medic, who cradled her gently and began checking her for injuries. She's shaken, he said. But she'll be okay. Good, Marcus said, turning toward the remaining men now bound and kneeling in the corridor. Now let's find out who the hell they really work for. Redbeard was there. Marcus recognized him instantly, even without the fake vest. He knelt silently, head lowered. Another man, lanky with slick back hair and a smug expression, kept darting glances toward the exit. Name, Marcus barked. No answer. Name. Redbeard lifted his head. Trevor Millis. And him? Dean Vickers. He runs this operation. You're not law enforcement, Marcus said. You're extortionists. Dean finally spoke. It's just a side hustle. People fall for it. We find him, they pay, we walk. Nobody gets hurt. You kidnapped a child. She was leverage. We weren't gonna keep her. We've done it before. Parents pay. We say it was a mistake. HOA misunderstanding. And we move on. Marcus stared. How many? I don't know, dozen maybe. Mostly kids. Some seniors. Whatever got people scared. And you're working alone? Vickers hesitated. That was all Marcus needed. He knelt, pulled a tablet from his pack, and played a short audio clip Rhea had decrypted from surveillance on the HOA network. A voice, clearly Glenn Travers, the chair of the Willow Glen HOA, whispered, "Let the civic boys handle it. Less liability. For us. If they go too far, it's not our problem." Vickers's face turned white. You recorded that? No, Marcus said coldly. You did. We just found it. Over the next hour, the team extracted confessions, bank records, a list of addresses, families who'd paid fines under threat. And just as Marcus suspected, several Willow Glen board members had quietly signed off on the operation in return for cash kickbacks. It wasn't just a rogue scam. It was an organized, neighborhood-wide criminal racket hiding behind the banner of community management. As dawn broke, Elias handed Marcus a file. This is everything, he said. You ready to burn them down? Marcus stared out at the suburban horizon. Sprinklers clicking on. Joggers with headphones. The illusion of safety. I'm ready, he said. But not just to burn them down. I'm going to bury them, publicly. Lena stood beside him now, holding his hand. Still trembling, but her chin lifted. Strong. Just like her mother had been. They messed with the wrong house, she said softly. Marcus didn't answer. He didn't need to. He was already planning his next move. 1 week later, the same man who had knelt in the dirt of his front lawn, writhing from a taser while his daughter screamed from a van, now stood in front of the Willow Glen Estates clubhouse, dressed in full Marine Corps blues. Colonel Marcus Hale had shaved that morning with the same precision he once used to brief generals, his medals shined to a mirror gleam, his boots polished like the past still mattered. And maybe it did. Maybe the uniform wasn't just about formality, it was about reminding everyone in that room who he was, what he'd stood for, and what he'd just done to bring his daughter home. Inside, the room was packed. Residents from Willow Glen and surrounding neighborhoods filled every seat and lined the walls. Some held papers, letters, fines, complaints long ignored. Others clutched coffee cups like lifelines, whispering nervously to each other. Phones were already raised, recording. At the front, under a polished brass Willow Glen HOA seal, stood Glenn Travers, the HOA board chair. He adjusted his tie twice in 30 seconds, eyes flicking toward the door like a man who knew a storm was coming. Then the storm walked in. Marcus didn't wait to be introduced. He strode down the center aisle, the crowd parting with murmurs and camera flashes. When he reached the microphone, he stood tall, silent for a moment, letting the weight of the uniform settle over the room. Then he spoke. My name is Colonel Marcus Hale. U.S. Marine Corps, retired. Last Sunday, 2 men claiming to be HOA compliance officers tossed me on my own lawn and abducted my 11-year-old daughter. The room gasped. Several neighbors instinctively covered their mouths. Someone dropped a pen that clattered too loudly. They wore vests that looked official. They quoted codes that didn't exist. They had a vehicle with no plates and fake badges, and yet not one neighbor intervened. Why? Because we've all been conditioned to fear authority, even fake authority, when it wears a vest and uses the word compliance. He tapped a button on a small speaker he brought. An audio recording began to play, unmistakable and damning. Let the civic boys handle it. Less liability for us. If they go too far, it's not our problem. Glenn Travers paled. A woman in the crowd gasped. Someone muttered, "That's Glenn's voice." Marcus continued. That recording, obtained from a compromised Civic Shield channel, confirms what I discovered after I rescued my daughter. Yes, I rescued her, not the police. Because while I lay tossed and bleeding on my lawn, 911 told my neighbor it was a jurisdictional matter. He took a breath. The group calling itself the Neighborhood Civic Authority is not real. It's a scam. A criminal front. They've been targeting families, using intimidation, fake fines, and even child abduction to extort money. And they were allowed to operate under the watch of this board. Not all of you, but some. Enough. He looked directly at Glenn Travers. You took money to look the other way. Glenn stammered. That's, Colonel Hale, that's a serious accusation. You signed off on inspections that never happened. You stamped fake violation notices. You authorized Civic Shield to enforce compliance even though they had no legal standing. Marcus opened a folder and laid it on the table beside him. Here are the wire transfers, the forged signatures, and the emails. Here's the paper trail connecting this board to Civic Shield. Then, from the back of the room, two men stepped forward. Not HOA security. Not local police. Federal agents. They flashed their credentials and walked directly to the front. Glenn Travers's face crumbled. What is this? You're under arrest for conspiracy, extortion, and complicity in the kidnapping of a minor, one agent said. Please stand up. The crowd erupted into chaos. Someone shouted, I knew it. Another neighbor screamed, they threatened my mother over a lawn chair. Glenn stammered, I didn't know they'd take a kid, but you knew they were criminals, Marcus said, stepping aside. And you let them in our homes. The agents cuffed Glenn and two other board members who tried to slink out unnoticed. One woman sobbed as she was led past her neighbors. Another man cursed under his breath, red-faced with shame. In the days that followed, the case became national news. CNN ran a segment titled Marine Colonel Exposes HOA Kidnapping Scheme. Talk shows debated the rise of fake authority in gated communities. Online forums called Marcus the HOA General. But Marcus didn't care about any of it. He cared about Lena. He sat beside her in court that Friday morning as three defendants, Glenn Travers, Trevor Redbeard Millis, and ringleader Dean Vickers, sat behind bulletproof glass in courtroom 6B. The gallery was full. Some people held signs. Others just held each other. The prosecution laid out the facts: organized fraud, impersonation of law enforcement, interstate wire fraud, child endangerment, and dozens of counts of extortion. Then it was Marcus's turn. He walked to the stand, crisp and calm, every word landing like a hammer. This was never about a bicycle. This was never about HOA rules. This was about power, fear, and the silence that fear breeds. These men used fake titles to terrorize families. They abducted children. They targeted the elderly. And they were protected by the very people who promised to keep us safe. He glanced at the jury. My daughter still wakes up crying. She checks the locks. She asks if the vest men are coming back. They broke something in her. And I won't let that happen to another family again. When the verdict was read, guilty on all counts, the courtroom burst into applause. Even the judge, a mother of two, didn't hide her fury. You masqueraded as protectors while preying on the innocent. You do not deserve freedom, she declared, handing down maximum sentences to all three. That weekend, the Willow Glen HOA was dissolved. The residents voted to replace it with a new, transparent council made up of volunteers, no private enforcement, no closed-door decisions. Every dollar would be tracked. Every action would be voted on. Marcus declined a leadership role. But he showed up to every meeting, sitting quietly in the back, watching. 2 days later, Lena found a brand new purple bike on their porch, with a note tied to the handlebar in colorful marker, "You are strong, from all of us." She rode up and down the street that afternoon, waving at neighbors who cheered from porches. Her giggle rang out like a bell, cutting through the fear that had haunted the block. That night, Marcus stood on his porch, arms crossed, watching the cul-de-sac. Not because he was suspicious, because this time, it truly felt safe. Elias called later that evening. "We're putting together a team," he said. "HOA abuse is bigger than just Willow Glen. You interested? Marcus smiled faintly. Let me tend my garden first, he said. Then maybe we go national. And for the first time in a long time, Marcus Hale went inside, turned off the porch light, and slept without his boots by the bed. As the author of The Battle for Willow Glen, I want to leave you with more than just the thrill of a dramatic story. I want to leave you with a truth that matters. This story, though fictional, is a reflection of something very real in our society: the quiet abuse of authority. In neighborhoods across America, people trust that those in charge, HOA boards, local enforcers, even neighbors, will act in good faith. But sometimes, that trust is manipulated. Sometimes, power becomes a mask for greed. And when that happens, the cost isn't just money. It's peace. It's dignity. It's the safety of our children. Colonel Marcus Hale didn't just rescue his daughter. He unmasked a system that had allowed intimidation to flourish behind clipboards and false titles. And while not all of us are Marines or trained to breach buildings, we all have a responsibility to protect our families, to question authority when something feels wrong, and to speak up when others stay silent. Here's the lesson: don't be afraid to investigate the rules that govern your life. Ask who's making the decisions. Ask who benefits. Real authority welcomes questions. Fake authority hides behind fear. If someone tells you, "This is just how things are," that's your cue to look closer. And to the parents listening, you are your child's first shield. Pay attention to what's happening on your street, in your school board, in your community council. That vigilance, that love, may one day be the only thing standing between your family and a system gone unchecked. To the neighbors who turned away in this story, don't be them. Courage doesn't always mean confrontation. Sometimes, it simply means calling the truth what it is. And to everyone who stood with Marcus, thank you. Because community, when it's built on courage and transparency, is more powerful than any false badge.